Are you ready to become a leader and change maker by getting your PhD? Ready to stop stressing and actually take action so you create offer letters instead of rejections? Then this is the spot for you. I'm Dr. Natalie Morse, and I'm here to help you get into your dream PhDs with full funding. Let's go. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Natalie, and we are joined with Nikki, and we want to hear all about her journey from undergrad to the PhD.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I did my undergrad at UC Davis and I graduated in 2023 with a BS in psychology. I worked in undergrad and a little bit of research with autism interventions, but then I was interested in working with adults. So I've got a position at UCSF where I work with adults with all types of neurological disorders. Now I'm starting grad school at the same institution in the fall. So exciting.
It's very exciting. And so, what is your PhD going to be in?
The PhD is in rehabilitation science. So kind of like a new interdisciplinary field that has been around maybe the past couple of years. It's really getting a lot of traction. So it kind of combines PT and OT, neurology, like a bunch of different disciples coming together. The aim is to work on improving quality of life and more functional outcomes in patients. So you work with different disease populations. My focus is going to be neurology.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So for people with a psychology undergrad, that tends to be broad, and you could keep going into like clinical psych. So how did you decide this path?
So originally I actually was considering clinical neuropsych, but being at UCSF, I had a lot of interactions with neuropsychologists and even had the chance to sit in on a neuropsych eval and observing. It's such a long battery, both for the administrator and for the patient. It's just very exhausting to administer, and it gets kind of repetitive if like this is your full-time job and you do it 8 hours, 40 hours a week, So I just didn't feel like I would be stimulated enough by that. That's what I kind of liked about the research side of things. Like there's always new things you could do with data, like new questions you can answer. But the neuropsych side, it's very standardized, it's very repetitive. And so I just didn't feel that was for me. But with a psychology degree, you can do so many different things and apply to so many different PhDs. So I applied to various fields. I applied to cognitive psychology, clinical, and then I also applied to this rehabilitation science, which is because the focus was in neurological disorders. It aligned well with my psychology background, but I think if I were to work in like osteo or anything like that, it wouldn't align.
That's a good point. I think people get hung up on the department names sometime instead of the functional outcomes, kind of like like treating the disease and not the functional outcome. So any advice or thoughts for others as they're considering where they are applying?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, try not to focus on the department name because when I tell people what I'm doing my PhD and they've never heard of rehabilitation science, so then after explaining it, it does align sort of with those things. I think what a great way to start would be if you are in search for programs is look at papers that interest you and like it's a citation chain. So there's a lab or PI's papers that you've read on PubMed or something, and then you find the institution and then see if they have a lab or see if you can apply to a program to work in that lab. That's a great way for finding programs.
I love that way. And that's also how we help our clients do that as well.
Yeah.
It also, in a scientific way, kind of makes it a little bit more blind because, you're focused on the work and the functional outcomes and what you're actually be doing versus like, this one says Stanford. Like, everybody wants to go to Stanford or everybody wants to go to Harvard, but you get to find the programs that are going to be better long-term for you and hopefully happier throughout the process.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Did you always know you wanted to do a PhD?
No, actually, I always thought up until sophomore year of college, I was like, oh, I want to go to med school. And then I took the basic coursework that you have to do, like the chem and the bio. And I just did not enjoy the coursework at all. I felt like it was very micro-focused, but that just like wasn't for me. I liked more observable behaviors and like large data type of thing. So psychology fit well in that sense. And then I think even as a research coordinator, I think that what affirmed that a little more is when I started this job at UCSF, I see a lot of patients pretty much every day. And so I'm like administering similar assessments and it gets kind of repetitive. And even the doctors that I work with say this as well. So that's why I chose this route.
I mean, I think I'm the same way. I'm curious. I'm easily bored. So yeah, being in a repetitive, even a very specialized technical place like a doctor, because I have friends who
Yeah.
are different kind of doctors, and they're like, once you're in your practice or whatnot, it
Yeah.
pretty similar things day to day.
Yeah.
So
Like there's only
yeah.
so many ways you can treat the same thing. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So how did you get your RA roles? I want to hear that story.
honestly, I think I started applying like the end of the year before I was graduating. So I graduated June 2023. So all of like October, November, December before that, I had just looked up a bunch of different roles that had to do with, I wanted more research experience. So the role had to be something in research. We had a really great post-grad career department at my university. They actually helped me a lot suggesting what kind of positions are you qualified for, or like, payment wise, like what is your goal, and kind of helping me find positions like that. So I like really recommend people take advantage of those university resources, and they even like reviewed my resume and my cover letters and things like that. And so yeah, like I applied randomly on like it's called AP Recruit website that the whole UC system uses. And so I just went through like the application route. And so
Yeah,
I had maybe 2 or 3 interviews. So yeah,
that's
it's cool.
awesome. I think a lot of people would be jealous who don't have those opportunities like at their
Yeah.
fingertips, especially once you leave a university. I think it just feels
Yeah.
kind of like the world is so big and there's so much information.
So the post, I've been here 2 years now. Grad
Good
job.
for you. Good for you. And that's awesome. And did you feel like you got your hands dirty in lots of different areas?
Yeah, and this is one thing, like if you are gonna take on a post-grad research role, that like I would highly recommend that you ask the PI if there are opportunities for that, because there's a lot of different labs where I've seen other coordinators not given the same opportunities that me. It's all very like PI dependent. Which time do they have to mentor you? How willing are they? And is there even data, first of all, for you to do a project with? So I kind of like was at the right place at the right time. One of the projects had been going on for a year already. There's all this data collected. And so she was like, I want someone to like do something with this. And that happened to be me. So I would ask those questions like, is there data? Is there opportunity for conferences or personal projects? Like, of course, they expect you to work on it on your own time. You can't really be working on these things like during your 40 hours a week. So it's a lot of like proactiveness on your end. Like, how much time are you willing to put into it? Just as long as the PI is open to it and they have something for you, it's like that's where the opportunity lies.
Oh, that's awesome. I really love that. So did you have your own projects? Did you do your own publications, or how did that work?
Yeah. So when I first joined the lab, like a couple months in, I was like, yeah, I really want to do a project about this. So it's kind of like you go to the PI with something that, after being in that space for a bit, this is something interesting. We have this data. Can we do this? And she's like, yeah. So like, as long as, you bring it up. And so then I've had like maybe 1 or 2 publications, like first author that I'm working on right now. Some have come back for revisions and like nothing, officially published yet, but quite a bit of like co-author stuff. Yeah.
That's
Which is, like,
awesome.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I think that'll really help people as they see their path. As I think sometimes people think, oh, I got the role done. I think there's always things to be done to move forward. So then you took this role with the idea that you were going to do a PhD. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I really wanted to be in the research space. I just didn't know what kind of PhD I wanted to do yet. So this role was helpful in kind of clarifying that for me. Yeah, I knew I wanted to be in the research space, especially having seen the lifestyle and the people are doing it.
That's interesting because I think some people, I hear it multiple ways. Some people think like the lifestyle is like super flexible and great. And other people think the lifestyle is like you're trapped in a dungeon working like 40 hours a day or something. How do you feel about it all?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a variety of it. So my PI, she's extremely busy. So I feel in that sense, I've seen the work-life balance be not so great. But when I do speak with her about it, she's always like, well, you don't have to like be like me, she really stresses that. And so I've seen other people where like they have like maybe more of a narrower focus in their lab. And so they're able to have a bit more of a work-life balance. I feel like the more you like expand your themes and like the interests, like the more crazy it gets. So it's really like up to you.
That makes sense. And if you could go back like a year ago to when you were, I guess, starting this process, the application process, what would you tell yourself?
I think I would just say don't stress too much about it if it doesn't work out the first time. These are really competitive positions and require a lot of narrow focus, and the experience has to align very perfectly with the faculty mentor. And there are so many different things that are just out of your control. It may be that someone that you like just isn't taking on a student, but you're great for that position. Do what you can, and not everything is in your control. So just hope for the best. And if not, you just try again.
Were you stressed? Like, what did it feel like when you started this process?
Yeah, I was pressed because there's always a little, back of mind thoughts where it's like, well, I'm doing all of this work and it's like a 3 or 4 month long process. And every day after work, you're spending so many hours doing this. And you're like, well, what's the point of it if nothing good comes of it and stuff? But I think just changing the mindset, like, it's also a learning process. You're reading all these new papers and you're like, it's when you apply to a PhD, it's not just like an application. You have to still, it requires a lot of research.
So true, so true, my friend. I think we've all applied to undergrad and we're like, okay, but it's different. And so, it does take a little bit more.
Process. You might find something that like, oh, well, I thought I wanted to do this, but now maybe I want to do that.
I like that, though, to be open-minded, because there's a lot more information that you're going to be getting that you didn't have before. So that's part of the process. What was your experience working with us? How did that go? What was helpful to you?
So I think the biggest thing that was helpful for me is I had never known that you can reach out to PIs ahead of time, or you should be emailing them. And kind of the networking side of things is where this program was really helpful to me. Like, for me, at least, I applied to maybe 10 or 11 programs, and the only programs I had gotten interviews for or any kind of communication where I had networked with the PI and I had a chance to speak with them. And if that didn't happen, it kind of felt like my application was just lost among like the 100 others. And so I think sending those emails and having those templates and structuring it in a way that where like the PI is like, oh, she did the work. Like, I'm going to talk to her. I think that was like the biggest, most helpful tool for me through this program.
I love it. That's my favorite part too.
Yeah.
Because it's so helpful for you guys to talk to people. And like you said, figure out if it's a fit or not. So I love that. And also, when you start your program, you should start pretty much head and shoulders above other people because you did the work and you kind of already talked to this person. So you feel like you can start in a pretty positive space. I couldn't imagine going to a place where I hadn't done any networking and just showing up and be like, hope this works.
Yeah.
It would just be a different vibe. I mean, you would figure it out, but I think it would have a longer ramp up period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think especially because there is such little structure in the application process and a PhD program, like with medical school and law school, like you kind of know, like it's very standard, but here it's like your PI is going to make or break your experience. So that's like the nicest part about the networking. You get to know what you're getting into.
100%. What else would you like to share with other people starting their journey or anything like that?
I would just say, try to start the networking thing as early as you can, because I started kind of last minute. I started this maybe September, and by then a lot of the applications are going to be due soon and you have to get all your materials in. So it's a stressful time, especially if you're doing a full-time job. I never came across this program and didn't know that I need to do that until so late that I was rushing. I think if people are already getting started, that's great. You're ahead of the game already, and your whole process is going to go so much smoother and you're just not going to be as stressed as I was.
I love it. Yeah. Like, there's no reason to wait.
I know.
If you know you want to do it, you might as well just start the process so that way you're not as stressed.
I would say, I feel like there's a little bit of a misconception in terms of going from undergrad to PhDs. You don't always need the math. I had friends who've done master's programs and now they're like, well, I need even more research experience to apply to a PhD program. Sometimes I feel like unless you're getting publication or something very contingent out of the master's program, it's not worth your money or your time. And I've seen people they've done the master's straight out of undergrad and still have to do another research position to be qualified for a PhD. So I think if you can get a role like a research coordinator and a great PI, then there's no reason for you to have to spend like $80,000 a year on tuition. You can get the same experience if you really try to proactively find a job that can get you the same thing. And so I think like that would be one of my biggest tips is higher education is a barrier for a lot of people. You have to take out loans and stuff. So to do that if you can find something that you can get the same outcome out of as a master's program. So that's kind of what happened. I got papers and support. So yeah.
I love that. That's a really good call out, especially about the never ending need for more. Even people with the masters or with publications or with research roles, and I need more and more. I was like, no, because they're basically describing a PhD before getting a PhD. You don't need a PhD to get a PhD.
Yeah.
But I agree to be smart about your time and energy. And the master's can totally make sense if it's helpful. But there are a lot of masters that you really have to be judicious, because if you're just showing up and taking classes,
it's how are you executing the knowledge you're getting. So that's the kind of the big part I would focus on. If you are looking at the curriculum of a master's program and they don't specifically say like, oh, you'll be going to conferences or you'll have a publication at the end, like those are key things to look out for, see if it's worth your time and money.
We loved having you in the community, in the group. You were so positive, so fun, and you asked great questions, and you showed up and you got feedback and you incorporated it and you kept moving. So it was just a joy to see that, it paid off that you get to start.
I know. It's so exciting. And thank you to everyone. I know it takes a lot of people to put together a team like this and respond on Slack, even on weekends. It's very appreciated.
Yay. Well, we love it. We love the whole group. So appreciate you. Thank you, Nikki.